Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lalhmangaihzauva from Mizoram University. I teach literature at Mizoram University. As already announced, this session is called Inscriptions of Northeast India. With me are two very prominent academicians and writers from Northeast India. I will introduce them in brief. On my far left is Sri Arup Kumar Dutta. He is Padma Shri and an internationally acclaimed author, journalist, and social commentator from Assam, regarded as pioneer of English language writing in Northeast India. Thank you so much for coming here today, sir. I will not read out all of his works. And with me next is Professor Madhumita Barbora. Professor Barbora is a distinguished linguist and former professor at Tespo University, specializing in syntax, typology, and the documentation of Tibetan-Burman languages of Northeast India. The session is called Inscriptions from Northeast India. I'm not an expert in this field, and I don't know exactly how our panelists will go on. I will request Sri Arup Kumar Dutta ji to first speak on the subject for about 5 to 10 minutes, perhaps, and then we'll go on to Professor Barbora, and then we'll take questions from the audiences. Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I will not be able to intersperse whatever I have to say and translate into Hindi, because Hindi is not one of my strong points. But I'm sure all of you can appreciate or can understand English. And because it is such an esoteric kind of a subject, I just, in a very brief manner, I would just give you almost a layman's knowledge about the inscriptions of the Northeast. I was very intrigued by this subject entering into a literary festival. I am 80 years old. I've been writing for almost 60 years. And I have attended dozens of literary festivals. Let me tell you, as Mr. Ganga Kumar had said earlier, that most of these literary festivals, they deal with subjects that are not very trivial. They have speakers who are not very serious. They've just come to have some kind of a good time, see a few places. But I have gone through what Mr. Ganga Kumar and his team, the subjects they have chosen. And I'll tell you, never in my life I have come across a literary festival like this with these kind of subjects. I think it is because I don't think I'll have many more literary festivals to go to. So perhaps in my life, this festival, the Nalanda Literary Festival, perhaps it will be the climax of all my literary festivals in my life. Nalanda name itself, why I have come, I might not have come, but Nalanda itself, it evokes some kind of a different kind of connotation. The very name Nalanda, and I'm sure you people, most of you must belong to this region, you are so lucky to live in an area which is so steeped in tradition, steeped in history, and most important, steeped in culture. I'm sorry, I'm talking something about my own. Uh, I'm a deep believer in Buddhist philosophy, not Buddhism as a religion, but the philosophy behind Buddhism. And this area is the birthplace of Buddhism. In fact, I plan to go and fulfill one of my ambitions in life to go to Bodh Gaya, where Gautama Buddha, he received enlightenment. Anyway, coming back to my subject, you see inscriptions of the Northeast. Now this topic is important for the Northeast because our history, most of it prior to the coming of the Ahom dynasty, they entered Assam, the Brahmaputra Valley, in the 13th century. And they maintained what are known as Buranjis. They maintained diaries of their activities, their wars, their conquests, their way of life. And that is why from the 13th century onwards, we have been able to have a proper record of the history of the Brahmaputra Valley mostly, as well as the surrounding hills. Before that, history was absolutely obscure. It was mostly speculation. Based upon what? Based upon folklore, based upon certain very, what you call, references in the mainstream Indian literature. Otherwise, there was hardly any evidence of the kind of history that existed prior to the coming of the Ahoms. That this thing is blank. So how does our historians trace the evolution of our history prior to the 13th century, before the Ahoms came? That they depended upon, orally handed down material, folklore, illusions, and some amount of archaeological evidence. And these inscriptions, they constitute a part of that archaeological evidence. Now, from these inscriptions, I will not go into this thing, but let me just quote a pioneer British historian who gives you the reason. His name is EPG. He gives you the reason why there was no, unlike the rest of India, why there was no historical allusions, references prior to the coming of the Ahoms of the entire Northeast. And EPG wrote that some of the legends which have been mentioned suggest that in the distant past, the inhabitants of the country, which we now call Assam, attained considerable power and a fair degree of civilization. And this view is confirmed by the narratives of the Chinese pilgrim, Yuan Sang, and of the copper plate inscriptions. This being so, the question will doubtless be asked, why so few memorials of their times have come down to us? The reason is that nature has vied with man in destroying them. The Brahmaputra Valley is an alluvial country, and the impetuous snow-fed rivers, which debouse from the Himalayas, find out new channels and cutting away their banks. Consequently, no building erected in their neighborhood can be expected to remain for more than a limited time. Though occurring at distant intervals, violent earthquakes are in Assam quite as great a cause of destruction as fluvial action. A less sudden but almost equally potent cause of damage is found in the luxuriant vegetation of the country. So prior to the coming of the Ahoms, even during the times of the Ahoms, there was no building, no remnants that could enable us to trace the history of this region. So what are we dependent on? As I said, we're dependent on oral history and others things. And one of the important, you can say, components of our enabling, our enablement to learn about the history of the period prior to the Ahoms, dynasties like the Burman dynasty, Pala dynasty, these dynasties we know only from some of the rock inscriptions which are found, which have been deciphered. So that is one aspect of the utility of inscriptions in the Northeast. And second, of course, as Dr. Barbora will tell you, it enables us to trace the root of the Assamese language. Now, there was a canard spread some time back that Assamese is merely a patois of Bengali. But our inscriptions, they help us to trace the evolution of the Assamese language and how it is a distinct branch of the Prakrit, Aparbrahma, or the Brahmic language. I'm sure you'll explain it in far cogent details. So these two aspects are important as far as tracing our history is concerned. Now, I'll just give one specific example to show that it is even more than tracing history. It shows us, or it gives us an inkling about the kind of life, the kind of existence that prevailed during this period. Now, it's not matter of dull history. For instance, the Brahmaputra River today is absolutely dead. You see, if you go to the Brahmaputra, you'll just simply see a few traces, a few ferries plying over. But this river was once upon a time the lifeline of the entire Northeast. It was the soul of the Northeast. But today it is dead. Previously, because of the link of the Ganga and the Brahmaputra in what is today's Bangladesh, we had a vibrant river that was responsible for both the political history, the commercial history, the religious history of the Northeast. But today, as I said, it is dead. But we know that once upon a time, it was a very vital component because of two inscription sources. Now we have the Tezpur rock inscription of the 9th century. Now, what was written there, I'll just quote one small part of the Tezpur rock inscription during the time of Harjara Varman. The English translation is the approximately 9th century Tezpur rock inscription on the bank of the Brahmaputra was actually etched out because of a dispute on rowing rights upon the river and showed how thick the traffic was in those days. The royal edict on the rock was the outcome of a dispute between the officers of the court responsible for collection of tax for the use of the waterway, the Royal Navy, fishermen, and boatmen who ferried passengers and goods across the Brahmaputra. Overcrowding of the river had led each to come in the other's way. The ensuing quarrel had to be settled by the king, and the rock inscription immortalizes his directive as to who could use which section of the river. It also proclaims that anyone violating the directives would be fined 100 cowrie shell. So here immediately we know what was the kind of currency that was prevailing in the 9th century Northeast. It was cowrie shell. That was the form of currency. Now, the Vanamala plate of the 9th century, it even gives you more interesting details. It says, the boats were of many hues. To enhance their beauty, multicolored pennants and tails of deer were suspended upon them. Jhumkas were attached so that they tinkled when they moved. The sides of the boats were wrought in ornamental shapes colored with red. There was no danger of the boat sinking. The Lohita, which was the earlier name of the Brahmaputra, was full of such beautiful boats. Now, just some time back, there's one speaker who had said, those who forget our history, they tend to make the same mistakes of the past. So here we have now, there is no attempt by the powers that be in today's thing to make the Brahmaputra full of beautiful boats. Anyway, I think I have taken my time. I just wanted to give you, because obviously you are not that familiar with the inscription or such an esoteric subject, but just to give you an idea about how our inscriptions, they help us to trace our history previous to the coming of the Ahoms and recorded history. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Before we move on to Professor Barbora, sir, I have just one follow-up question. You have a book called The Ahoms, published in 2016. It's a historical novel. So since you are a creative writer, can you elaborate a little bit on how this novel is it at all influenced by the inscriptions that we are talking about in terms of your research for the book, your overall experience? Is it linked to inscriptions in Assam?
Actually, the Ahoms, as you can see, is published by HarperCollins. If you look at the title, it's called The Ahoms, a Reimagined History. So in order to make history more enjoyable, I have tried to give it an imaginative kind of flavor to historical episodes. But as far as your question is concerned, I had no longer needed to rely on this kind of inscription, because the Ahoms, they kept meticulous record of their entire period. So I was more reliant on the Buranjis or histories, chronicles, rather than any kind of inscription.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Uh, we will move on to Professor Barboro, and towards the end, we'll take questions from the audiences. Please, ma'am.
Thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Mr. Ganga Kumar when he invited me, and also Professor Warsi, because he was the one who connected. He's not here. Professor Warsi had mentioned my name to Mr. Ganga Kumar. And I'll also like to thank the organizers and the volunteers and all the young men who are taking care of us, especially Gaurav Kumar who's taking care of me. And I'm really impressed. My first visit to Bihar, and Patna is beautiful, and Rajgir is more so. And the winter today, the fog that I witnessed reminded me of Shillong, reminded me of the cold winters we once had in Assam. I suppose Mizoram is still beautiful. It's very beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. This talk, when I told Ganga Kumar that I'm a linguist, I work on synchronic studies. That is, I work on the present language that is spoken by people. And in the previous session, where Miss Millie and Mr. Kumar and the other lady, they were all talking about language. That's more my kind of work, and I do it in detail. But when I was asked to work on inscription, I was a bit worried because I'm not a diachronic researcher. It's more of a synchronic work I do. So history, when I had to look in, so I thought that how can I go and mention all the list of names of inscriptions that have been discovered by historians, archaeologists, and even linguists, some of the diachronic linguists. Then I thought that by looking into all the various dynasties, that is pre-Ahom era, and then the Ahom era, then followed by the British who comes in, uh, I found a very interesting change. And of course, in most of these dynasties, I'll mention the dynasties period wise. There are six I have listed out. The first is the Varman dynasty from 350 AD to 650 AD, nearly 300 years. Then comes the Salastamba dynasty. It is from 650 to 900 AD. Then the Pala dynasty, 900 to 1200 AD. Then the Chutia dynasty from 1187 to 1523. The Ahom dynasty, 1228 to 1826. And in 1826, the British annexes Assam today under their rule. So, and there are a number of researchers who have listed out the number of inscriptions that have been made on rocks, on iron, on tapestries, on pillars, on coins, in temples or in different fine spots, which could be like the Brahmaputra one that is during the Salastamba dynasty, the 9th century, which was there. And what was interesting in this finding analysis was that they did it. Why did they do these inscriptions? They did it mainly to show their rule, the govern. How did they govern, and what was their control over the area in which, the geographical area in which they were working. Then also the administrative work that was given to the elite in the royalty, the governance, the division of the districts into smaller units where they would govern, and then also about the agriculture and how agriculture was done. And most importantly, the lands were donated to the Brahmins who were the donees, who got the land. So that was one very important information we get there. And then we have the inscription also, the revival of religious learning. And then Sanskrit came in as a ritual language for the rituals. And the Brahmanical patronage by the higher ups was there. And this influenced Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and Shaktism that came in later. And it also tells us the geographical area of Kamrupa, that is old Assam, as it was called then. And finally, what is interesting and is important for me is that through the various language that was official language that was used by the rulers, then the vernacular language that was used by the common man, and the script that had evolved while writing all the official documents, that has gradually through hundreds of years. So if you start from the third, fourth century, you come to the 19th, 20th century. That's quite a long period. You see that the Assamese script has been evolved down the line. So initially, if you look into some of the work, I had made a list, a table. In fact, I thought that I didn't know whether I would have to give a PPT, I would have to go speak solo, or now that we have a group here, that's more interesting. So the Varman dynasty, the official language was Sanskrit, and the vernacular was Prakrit, and the script was Brahmi. Now, Varman dynasty was influenced by Gupta dynasty. Of course, the Guptas never came to this far, but if you look at the Allahabad pillar, where you have the inscription, there is a mention of some of these dynasties that were influenced by the Gupta dynasty. I think so it is Samudragupta who was the one who had influenced most of the rulers, and all the elites that the rulers felt that they should adopt Sanskrit as an official language because it became a prestige language. And we also have the same phenomenon. And what is interesting, what happened thousands of years back, the same phenomena is happening today. Like today, when we are talking of Boli and language, of course, I wanted to find out if the Boli, Magadhi, and the other language Bolis that were being described, are they actually Bolis or are they individual languages which have to be actually ascertained? So this was happening even thousands of years back. We are trying to understand how this evolution of a language happens, as well as the death of a language. Two things were happening simultaneously. A language evolved and a language died. But the impact of the Indo-Aryan, you can find it throughout. Even if later Sanskrit was in Salastama dynasty, Sanskrit was the official language. In the Pala dynasty, it was Sanskrit. Till then, we have the dominance of Sanskrit in full. And then, what is interesting, the vernacular is changing. Now, why is the vernacular changing from Prakrit to Kamrupi Prakrit? So there is Prakrit, but there is a local version coming in because the words, the loan words, or the structures, or the features of the local languages are getting into the more prominent Prakrit language. So Kamrupi Prakrit, which is supposed to be one of the, is called the Old Assamese in a form, or it started in the Middle Ages, and Kamrupi Prakrit continued in the Salastama dynasty as well as in the Pala dynasty. But Pala was not fully controlling Assam. Pala was mostly in Bihar and Bengal and parts of Assam. So these area also did what? That is the occupation of the Pala dynasty in Northeast. That was also, you had Kamrupi Prakrit. And the script was now changing from Brahmi to Kamrupi. So the old Assamese is coming in. So gradually, through hundreds of years, the script is changing. And we are evolving a new script. I'm keeping one thing out of here, that is, remember that Northeast has always been a land of diversity. We have 5 language families in Assam. I'll come to that a bit later. And actually, none of the historians or any recording that has been done, we are recording or keeping record of all these languages which might have shaped Assamese and why Assamese is different from other Indo-Aryan languages and why Assamese, the claim is Assamese language. I'm not talking of script. Script is Oa, Koko and all that. But when it comes to language, the linguistic features which are different, very different, I'll mention some from Hindi and some from Bengali and how we are closer to the Tibeto-Burman languages in Northeast. So we have, then comes the Chutia dynasty. Now this Chutia dynasty, the rulers are from Boro Kachari. They're from Boro Kachari community. But they name themselves, they have Sanskrit names because it is a prestige. Now, what is ironical about this Chutia dynasty is that they came in when just a few years before Ahom came in. So when the Ahom dynasty comes in, the Chutia dynasty is from 1187 to 1524, and the Ahoms came in 1228 to 1826. So a few years, 40, 50 years gap, then the Ahom comes in. So what has happened to the Chutia dynasty? Whatever inscription they had, initially they started in Sanskrit. They had Sanskrit and they wrote in Brahmi. They didn't write in Kamrupi script. Then when the Ahoms came in, they were influenced by this more dominant ruler. So they adopted Thai. That is the Thai, one of the languages from the Thai-Kadai family. They took in Thai, and Thai is a Tibeto-Burman language. No, sorry, Thai-Kadai language, not Tibeto-Burman. And then the script was also Thai. But gradually, when the Ahoms consciously shifted to Assamese as their official language, the Chutias also moved to Assamese and had their whatever records they had in Assamese, and they started using the Assamese or the Kamrupi script. And then we have a new phase coming in where just now Dr. Sir had mentioned that is we have records, the Burunjis from the Ahom era. So while looking into this, I'm not a history person and I wouldn't be able to do justice to giving an account of the historical account of it. So I looked at it from the linguistic perspective and I was seeing that we know language change. Even a writer, novelist, translator imbibes a lot of word from the different bolis and puts it into her novel. Could it be from Rajasthan? Could it be from Bihar? From any other place? We do it. And that is how you are doing what? You're incorporating a number of words, along with it, a number of sounds, phonological features, which is different. So that happened. And after that comes when the Ahom dynasty was mostly in Upper Assam. We have another dynasty coming, the Koch dynasty. Koch Bihar is now in Bengal. So we have Assamese Kamrupi as the official language for the Koch dynasty. The native language is Koch, but they speak Assamese, and the script is again Assamese. This is where we see the predominance of from Old Assamese to medieval Assamese to Neo Assamese, which is coming, because we have to also keep in mind the literature that was written during this period, and that has also evolved and shaping Assamese, which has got the status of a classical language recently last year. So we have then after the Koch and then the annexation to the British government, we find that English was official. Bengali was there because the university was Calcutta University was there, and then the printing press came in. The first journal that we had was Arunodoi. Then we have the printing press where the Bible was translated, where we have the first Assamese grammar being written. So this is how the language took a shape. It came to us by the 19th century, end of 19th century. By 20th century, of course, we have the language is properly shaped and their authors are there. So if we just look at inscriptions, or we just give accounts. Uh, but we cannot ignore the literary work because this is a literary festival. So we need to find out how the evolution of Assamese language and script traces from ancient Brahmi to Kamrupi, that is Eastern Nagari, e- evolving significantly during the Neo-Vaishnavite era, 14th to 16th century, with figures like Konkodeva, Madhav Kondali, who refined the script and uh, standardizing the language through literary works like the Assamese Ramayan and Middle Assamese, evolved the Ahom era. The script adopted and chronicled was a Ghargaya script. They took it, and they also through Sanskrit Prakrit language we come to the earliest written literature dates back to 13th century, and we have the poet Hem Saraswati who wrote the Prahlad Charitra, translated, composed it, and the coach under the coach king. So the coach king, he's a coach, he's a Tibeto-Burman speaker, but he is encouraging the writer to write in Assamese. So if we then comes Madhav Kundali and Shankar Deva, then comes Madhav Deva, and all these writers, and then the missionaries who brought out the first grammatical notes of Assamese language by American Baptist Missionary Union and the English Assamese Dictionary by Miles Bronson. So these are some of the pioneering work that has been done, not only by the local people, local writers, but even by the missionaries who had come and settled in India for some time. So what do we find? What are the features that makes Assamese different from other Indo-Aryan language? So we find, if you come to pronunciation, in Hindi you have two sounds, third. We don't have that sound, third, the retroflex. We only have the alveolar todo. It is todo in Assamese and third in English. So there is a position. You use your tongue. Your tongue actually helps you, and your palate helps you to speak a language. So your tongue, your palate, and your lips. If you do phonetics, linguistics, all your students will know how we do pronunciation. And we don't have the sound sh. We don't say shiva. We say hibo. We have a villa fricative. Ho. The sound comes from here. I think so the ho sound comes somewhere during Madhav Kundali or Rudra Kundali's time. That sound was first traced in Assamese. So we will never have a sh.
Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you wrap it up in
Yeah.
a minute or so?
Yeah. So you don't have agreement marker like Hindi. You have gender, strilling, pulling. We don't have. We have only person agreement. And then I want to say in syntax, we have a very interesting phenomena. The negative in Hindi is nahi, na. Na, do you have na? Nahi. But we don't have a full form. We have a morpheme that is only the sound na. And the na sound, consonant sound, it copies the vowel from the main verb. Like if I say come, come, that is I will eat. I'll say nakau. I cannot make it nakam. We don't have it comes to first person nakau. R in na is copied from R in ka. Ka is a word, we all have it. Nakam. So we have that is one feature. And then we have Bangla is a proper nominative accusative language, but Assamese, like most Tibeto-Burman language, has split ergativity. That's a case marker that occurs in the third person subject, whether as well as in the plural second person, tumaluke, hihon, and third person, we have it, which is not there in Bangla. We have, of course, classifiers we borrowed from a lot from the Boros. And well, since if I go on, it will keep on going on. So I'll come to a close, but you should keep in mind the 5 language families. India, only Assam has the 5 language families. Indo-Aryan, which came since the Burman Gupta dynasty influence. Then you have Austroasiatic, that is Khasi from the Khmer group. Then you have the Tibeto-Burmans. They are either migrated or they were there in Northeast throughout. Then we have the Dravidians when, the tea laborers were brought in from Chotanagpur and right up to Andhra Pradesh. You look at the belt, how they were brought in to work in the field. And then Ahoms came and they brought in Dai Kadai. So when you have 5 rich language families, and the Tibeto-Burman, I haven't touched it. There was a mention of census. In 2011 census, Tibeto-Burman language family has a percentage of 1.01, and that includes 66 languages. Out of the 66 languages, 62, I think so, is spoken in Northeast. 64 is spoken in Northeast, and 2 languages are spoken in the Western Himalayas. Rest is all spoken in the Eastern Himalayas, and I can vouch that except for a handful, none of these languages are documented or recorded. So Mr. Ganga Kumar has a big job. And no wonder Professor Devi has said it is not an easy work. I've worked on a language for 10 years, then only I could write a book. So that is not easy. So anyway, I wish Nalanda Literary Festival my best. I give my best wishes. And I hope they keep to their words of documenting and recording. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I wish we have more time. Sir, can we have a couple of questions? Or? Yeah. So we'll take questions from the audiences. I think students are also here. So anyone is free to ask questions, maybe at least one each to our esteemed panelists.
Please raise your hand. It should be a question, not a comment.
Good afternoon. I am Sharik. Thanks to the esteemed panelist. I think most of the people are not connected with Northeast, but the effort is there from Nalanda Literature Festival to bring Northeast and Bihar together in one platform, and they have done justice to whatever possible. Just for the better understanding of the audience at large, what ma'am and sir has already deliberated, that's a part of Northeast which you see is Assam. Probably Northeast is diverse, what people say, and we are diverse in our language, in our tribe, in our culture, cuisine, craft, everywhere. But as of now, we are united, but one thought, that is Ashtalakshmi. We have 8 states where Sikkim is also part. I think there is a lot of opportunities and avenues where we can learn Northeast in a bigger way in terms of our diversity, in terms of our culture, craft, cuisine, everything. And in the morning, Bikram sir has already said that Ahoms Day he was relating, and what ma'am and sir has said, Ahom was one of that part which has been deliberated. I think more than Ahom, there are a lot many things which can be learned, and AI and artificial intelligence will give you a better platform to understand Northeast in a better way. And literally, Nalanda Literary Festival has given us the opportunity to get Northeast here to speak in front of you, and I think we should give a big round of applause to the organizers for that, ma'am. And we look forward for a more bigger association. Thank you.
Do we have any question? I think we have a very satisfied audience. It was a wonderful session. Please conclude.
Thank you so much. We're now coming to the end of the session. I didn't thank the organizers at the beginning. I'd like to thank the organizers. It's also my first time in Bihar and Nalanda. Thank you for the warm hospitality and for having a panel on the Northeast. Thank you very much. A huge round of applause to our panelists once again.